in the West, we have this thing that people are like, 50 and over and it's over. And I think that's absolute like rubbish, right? It's like I'm 56 years old and I feel like my life is just starting. And I want to do things that make me happy. I can't see a time when I'm not doing some form of work,
Mhm.
whether it's paid or unpaid. Otherwise, what would I do? I'd just sit around and do nothing, and that's not very fulfilling. That's my advice to young people:
Mhm.
practical, income generating, and always learn, and make sure the learning is related to your passion,
Mhm.
not what your somebody told you that was the right thing to do. It's the thing that makes you happy is the thing that you need to go do. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think in a world right now that is driven by high levels of anxiety, we talked about it during this whole podcast about, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to lose my job? How
Yes.
fast are things moving? Information coming at light speed and all this stuff. I think one of the things that I embrace is that um, if you embrace the fact that for good or bad, everything will change, it will
Mhm.
change. So
Mhm.
even if you have very, very good moments, you will have a bad moment. And then you'll have another good moment, and then you'll have another bad moment. It's just the way life works. And if you are able to kind of think about life from that perspective, I equate it to a roller coaster. If you don't think about it from the perspective, your life will be like this.
Mhm. Mhm.
But if you do think about it that way, then things tend to balance and even out a little bit better.
Mhm.
Um,
Also would like to learn more about the career path insights from your side, because you are such an experienced veteran in this industry. And a lot of my audience, they are young generation. Just now, Amazon announced a big layoff in China.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's a very big number. A lot of people are losing their job. If you look back, your career highs and lows, what's the best advices or suggestions you would like to share with audience?
yeah. No, I'd love that question because I think I'm very passionate about this. The best advice I can have is one simple saying for me is one very true. When one door closes, another door always opens.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And every time I've been involved in my career in lots of restructures, and times when I was made redundant at a senior level. And the first time it happened, I think, that was because I had worked for a company for nearly 12 or 13 years straight. And then in these faster paced environments where this is normal, companies move quickly, especially in tech and scale ups. They move quickly, and like the people at a certain juncture aren't the right people at the next juncture and aren't the
Mm-hmm.
right people at the next juncture. So this is normal. It's not like personal. But I think in every one of those cases, a bigger and better door is always opened up for me. And what do I mean by bigger and better? I'm not talking about like more money. I'm not talking about, that could happen. What I'm talking about is that I think that if you are, I think, value and passion led, so
Mm-hmm.
you think about what is important for you in your life, right? In my life, what's important is my family is number one, what I do for them, and how I support them. And then the number, next in line is what do I enjoy doing? Like what gives me some fulfillment? And then after that is coming from like, like money and those sorts of things, which are important, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have that sort of focus and you truly know what you want and like you create your own sort of vision for yourself, then I know that you will always find a path somewhere because like a company, you have a focus on something that's important to you. You have
Mm-hmm.
a passion, you have a vision, and then you have to do the things that it all involves work, right? Nothing just
Mm-hmm.
appears and happens, as we all know, like overnight. But then you start to are able to be focused on what you need to learn, and learning is more important than ever. Like we live in a very opinion driven world today, which is
Mm-hmm.
very dangerous. That's why the world is becoming so polarized. That's why that societies are becoming polarized because we're social media driven, quick snippets and like quick snippets of information and then opinion led. If you have this focus and vision, and I think, and you have a belief that, a bigger or a better door will open, you then realize that what you have to do is educate yourself in that process. And once you start educating yourself with real information, that and then spreading that information with people in your network. A network is important. I took this course once called Career Shifters, and the one tenet is you can't do it by yourself. You have to do it with others. And so if you have those things and you're learning and you're doing with others, doors will open. So I in the West, we have this thing that people are like, 50 and over and it's over. And I think that's absolute like rubbish, right? It's like I'm 56 years old and I feel like my life is just starting. And I want to do things that make me happy. I can't see a time when I'm not doing some form of work, whether it's paid or unpaid. Otherwise, what would I do? I'd just sit around and do nothing, and that's not very fulfilling. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. It's just, follow your passions. I say to my children, follow your passions. What we've said on this call, then build a framework around your passions. Very important today. Like build a framework, write out what that passion looks like and how it works. And then now with the advent of AI, I think the cool thing, we talked about this thing about the one person, companies, that's completely possible on a level now with the opportunity where there, if you identify your passion, learn about it, build a framework, understand how the framework works, understand how AI can augment it, you can do anything you want with AI right now. And you don't need to go to work to work for a company. But you need to do those steps and you need to think about what your vision is and what your values are.
I would like to talk a little bit about the 35 years old curse in China. In China, we have a very interesting phenomenon that once you get over 35 years, it's very difficult for you to find a job. I'm curious, is this the same situation in UK for the people maybe 40 or 50 years old? The only way is to open their own business, or they can still have a career path in some companies.
I think what I've found to answer that direct question is, again, a lot of what we're talking about. So the advice that I would have is, given the rapid change, so a GPT general, a transformative technology always causes this level of change in society. And this is just going to happen on steroids now with AI. It was the same in the Industrial Revolution. If you look back on all the other GPTs in time, you'll find that there was huge societal shifts, massive layoffs, massive changes. It's been happening for centuries. We just don't go look back and educate ourselves. So now the question is, how do you insulate yourself from that? Some people, like, the only way to give yourself an opportunity to protect yourself from that is to do everything that we've been talking about and learn and understand how this new technology, how you can use it to enhance your potential, right? Now, this is where I come back to your question about whether it's a job or working by yourself. I think that will come to you naturally if you've done all this work to understand, and I use that word, codify your own expertise, understand how you can augment that expertise with AI, and then take it to either a an employment environment and show them how you can accelerate stuff for them, or you'll just learn that I don't need to do this, I could do this by myself. But you will have both opportunities. So as an example, one of the things after my process that I did is I ended up in a position, 4 months ago, where I could communicate the value I could bring by having built myself and codified an agentic engine for my expertise. So I did two things. I thought about how I could do it myself, but then I just went and started talking to people that were hiring for jobs, and I stood out because most of the people weren't talking about what I was talking about. They're just doing a normal job interview and saying, here's my experience, here's what I do, here's my They weren't saying, this is how I can make things materially different for you with what I know about AI, right?
Mm.
So you give yourself two opportunities, and take the time, especially when anybody 35 or older, their advantage to people just coming out of university. In this country, it's the people coming out of university that have the big problem because they lack experience and they're coming into a world that's changing rapidly.
Mm.
I would argue that the people 35 and above have an advantage because they have experience and they just have to learn how to codify that experience to be able to set themselves apart, either for private or to start their own business or to be differentiated within an employment role.
Mm-hmm.
So in my view, yes, of course, there's going to be people that are going to be affected. That's life, unfortunately. But you can really help yourself if you do what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And you start to make that your, like, become a product,
Yeah. Become
right?
a codified
Become
person.
a product that you and say, I am the best product because I have my AI augmenter that beside me, here's how I've done it. And I have myself with all my experience, my human capability, and my human um, 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 skills. Now
Mm.
these two things together are better than the person that doesn't have them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Then you don't have a problem with
mm.
the 35 curse.
Curse, yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's super helpful. And also, I have some audience, they are quite young generation and they just graduated from the university. And
Yeah.
they are super interested in the cross-border trade. So they want to open a store online and sell product from China to the global market. And
Yeah.
I got a lot of message from them that they believe they can build one person company with AI in this AI age. And from your point of view, do you think for young people after graduation they just start their own online business with AI? Is that a good choice? And do you have any suggestions for them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about this. I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, and my 15-year-old is going into what we call GCSE year here, and then she'll go on to A levels and think about the big question is, does she go to university or do they both go to university? And my personal view is that what my advice to my children is that what they need to do is a couple of things. First, they need to identify the things that they're passionate about and that they really enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
first of all. And then secondly, they need to think quickly and start to expose themselves, and I'll help them with that, about um, the more practical things about how the world works and how businesses run and how you
Mm-hmm.
make money.
Yeah.
So I guess and I think if they have that, if they choose to be sort of a professional, I mean, like a doctor or, a lawyer or an academic or a
Mm-hmm.
researcher or somebody, then of course I think university is, especially on the research side, if you think about how general purpose technologies are built, it's when they're defined by when you see a huge amount of research
Mm-hmm.
happening in a certain, and then that there's more and more money that goes to research and development. That's what's happened with AI. That's how we know it's going to be here for forever. It's not going anywhere, obviously. But so obviously, if you're in a field like that, you do that. But otherwise, no, I'm saying I want to get them learning as quickly as possible about practical things like customer journeys,
Mm-hmm.
like frameworks, like
Mm-hmm.
how you think about things in a more systematic way, how those things lead to generation of income. I think to me, that's the most important thing. And then if you need to go back into academia to bolster that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
then you can do it. But yeah, so answering your question is, and there's no reason why you can't do them in parallel,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So in today with the tool sets that people have, 100% go start an ecom business that, and remember, like just because the US is doing something. India just signed a huge deal with the EU. China is signed a huge deal with Canada. You know, like there's all these things going on. So the market is beyond the US. And if the US is choosing to do what they need to do, then they choose. But there's lots of opportunity, and the tool sets at everybody's that are so cheap. Like we've taken 2 people to build a company that is driving now significant or decent revenue. So we have revenue, and we've taken 2 people, and I think our total monthly costs around the tooling we use is about £250. Just think about that for a minute, right? Like the tools are so cheap that yes, if you have a human access to a factory in China, you've used AI to do work and taken a data set and says, what does this market over here really want? So now you can, and you have all that capability, go do it. And then you're learning how it works. And then you can also do, but at least you have a backup plan, and probably the plan that's going to be the most important one, because you're, you know, and then you can do the learning on the side. I say always learn, but always like learn things that if you're not, again, in academia, or you're not in research, or you're not in a profession, then learn the things that are going to progress your practical income driving activity. I take courses all the time now. So there's a platform here called Coursera. I'm always looking to expand my knowledge. And like I say, I'm not a reader, I'm a listener. So I use Audible, and everywhere I go, when I'm walking out, taking walks, when I'm on the train, when I'm walking around, I'm listening to a book. I have to, because it's moving at such a rapid rate, and learning how to do things more quickly. That's my advice to young people. Practical, income generating, and always learn, and make sure the learning is related to your passion, not what somebody told you that was the right thing to do. It's the thing that makes you happy is the thing that you need to go do. Yeah. The Japanese have a book, if everybody can read it. It's called Ikigai, and it's always about passion-led work. And that's why they don't stop working till, even after they finish their jobs, they still do the thing that they loved doing till the day they die, right? And that's where everybody, I think, you know, if you can get to that, then your life is going to be quite happy, I think.
Yeah, thanks for these precious suggestions. And the last, I would ask if you can recommend one book to our audience. Do you have any book in your mind?
Yeah, 100%. I recommend it to everybody. So the one book is called Nexus, and it's by an author called Yuval Noah Harari. I don't know if you've heard of that book, but it is basically about information shifts over time, because everything from the beginning of civilization has been based on information development, information distribution, and information control. So if people look back in time, they'll go, okay, this isn't new. It's just how societies and civilizations develop through like the Bible, or different books. So this book ends with kind of talking about where we're going with AI, and talking about the potential existential nature of AI if we don't control it and govern it in the right way, which is very, very frightening and scary. But I encourage everybody to read, because it's not about AI hype. It's about information revolutions. It's about AI as like civilizational shifts. Like, so this is where we've landed with information. We've landed in a place where nobody could have envisioned, and it's moving at a rapid rate. And it talks about what the dangers are, and where like it could all end for humanity very soon, over the next, whatever, like a couple of decades, unless we influence and control it in the right way, meaning that, and that's the big battle, because right now you've got significant, powerful governments that have seen that AI is the new weapon of the future, and are not driving the type of regulation or control that might be required to control it, which is very, very dangerous, but fascinating book. There's a book before it called Sapiens, which was the precursor to it. It's about history of humanity, but Nexus is, I think if people read that book, then they will want to then get an appetite to find out everything else they can read about AI, because frankly, it'll scare the daylights out of them. But it's important to have that knowledge, because if you don't know what the worst case scenario could be, then you're really in trouble, because then you got to work backwards and figure out what you can do today across your life, work, in civil influence, all those things that are important to help drive this technology in the way it can be utilized, which is incredible if it's utilized in the right way.
Yes. Yes, thanks for the recommendation. I'm going to buy one immediately after the show. Yeah, so thank you so much. We took much time, and thank you for your generous sharing with my audience. Do you have any other insight you would like to leave with our audience?
Yeah, the one I live by the most these days, and I have to think if it was a Chinese philosopher that might have. I do a lot of meditation and mindfulness work, and one of the things that really is a thing that I can lead my life now is a concept of impermanence. And I think in a world right now that is driven by high levels of anxiety, we talked about it during this whole podcast about, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to lose my job?
Yes.
How fast are things moving? Information coming in at, light speed and all this stuff. I think one of the things that I embrace is that if you embrace the fact that for good or bad, everything will change, it will change. So even if you have very, very good moments, you will have a bad moment, and then you'll have another good moment, and then you'll have another bad moment. It's just the way life works. And if you are able to kind of think about life from that perspective, I equate it to a roller coaster. If you don't think about it from the perspective, your life will be like this. But if you do think about it that way, then things tend to balance and even out a little bit better. It's kind of like your logo there. Like, I think that's a much smoother ride than sort of, like the deep, oscillations of people going from crisis to more important. So impermanence for me is like, I think if everybody, especially in this day and age, if you embrace impermanence and if you embrace the fact that things will always change, one door will close, another door will open. That's the way it works. Your life tends to get a little bit easier, I guess,
that's
for lack
great.
of.
Yeah, that's great. Life is full of ups and downs. I remember I saw a message in the UK bar. It says, keep calm, carry on.
And carry on.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, the best thing we can do when we are facing some challenges at life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter. I enjoyed the conversation.
Pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
No, that's an absolute pleasure.
Okay.
I enjoyed it a lot too.
Neo Wave Talk Show. Stay tuned.